I'm Suruthi.
I'm Hannah.
And welcome to Red-Handed, where I've already made a mistake.
Yep, many mistakes have been made this morning.
But through the magic of editing, you don't know. So why did I tell you?
Well, they know now. We are but fallible humans.
Exactly. Hello, welcome to another rendition of Red-Handed Covers Something.
Red-Handed Classic. From the archive. No, it's not Red-Handed Classic. It's brand new Red-Handed. I'm just going to move that out of the way because I can't see your face.
Oh, yes. I'm so used to looking at your face through a jungle of mics that I don't even notice, that I barely ever just see your face fully.
My face just looks like a pop filter to you.
Anyway, we're here. We're doing it. It's a brand new episode of Red-Handed, and it is mental.
I don't think I've cringed quite so hard in quite some time.
Yeah, it really, really dragged me back into some places
that I didn't want to go. I've been there before.
Didn't want to be.
Didn't want to return.
No, thank you. But we are all going to go back there collectively as a group of unwilling participants because we don't care about your consent when it comes to horrible things that we tell you. But this is not the only horrible thing we have to tell you. If you would like to listen to a shorthand, a little mini-sode, a 20-minute amuse-bouche of Red-Handed called Shorthand, you can do that every single week, every Tuesday, over on Amazon Music. And this week, we covered the Spanish Paralympic basketball team.
Yeah. Basically, they pretended to be disabled and they weren't. And it caused all sorts of trouble.
And they beat everyone.
Well, yes. So, very problematic, and we will tell you all about it over on Amazon Music this week on Shorthand. It is already out. It is already there, waiting for you, along with all of the other shorthands that we've done. Don't know how many? Lots.
Go check it out. But before you do that, stay here and listen to this. Because just after midday, on the 26th of April 2006, an 8-year-old little boy named Gareth left his parents' house and crossed over the drive to knock on the door of his neighbour's house, the Richardsons. Gareth was friends with the Richardsons' youngest child, Tyler Jacob. The pair played together almost every day, pretending to be Jedi Knights, fighting the evils of the galaxy with their trusty lightsabers. When Gareth went over that morning, though, something wasn't right. He rang the doorbell, knocked, and shouted for his mate Tyler Jacob to come out and play. But unusually, nobody came. Gareth knew that the family must have been in. Their car and their brand new pickup truck were still parked in the drive. Yet, he'd been waiting a full 5 minutes with no reply. It was then that little Gareth made his way over to the kitchen window and pressed his face against the glass for a better look. What he saw would almost certainly stick with the 8-year-old for the rest of his life. On the kitchen floor, half naked in her dressing gown, was Debra Richardson, Tyler Jacob's mum, lying in a pool of her own blood. Gareth recoiled from the window and ran off to tell his mum Sarah what he'd seen. Sarah called 911. Within minutes, 3 police officers were at the property and had smashed down the door with a battering ram. Debra Richardson was dead and had been dead for almost 12 hours. She'd been stabbed violently 12 times, and there were signs of a vicious struggle. But this was only the start of the nightmare that authorities would discover at the Richardsons that day. The door leading to the downstairs cellar was open, and a trail of blood led down into the darkness.
The cellar had clearly been the site of an almighty horror show. There was blood everywhere, and a knife lying on the floor. Sitting in the corner of the room, hunched in a ball, was Debra's husband, Marc. Marc was drenched in blood and sweat, sitting in the darkest part of the room, clutching a screwdriver. The officers drew their weapons and approached him, but as they got closer, Marc Richardson didn't move a muscle. Marc Richardson was dead. He'd been stabbed 20 times, and his body was already stiff with rigor mortis. This gruesome scene was bad enough, but the worst was still to come. Thanks to the neighbours, the officers knew that there were still 2 members of the Richardson family unaccounted for. Marc and Debra's kids, 12-year-old Jasmine, and 8-year-old Tyler Jacob. Officers went upstairs and entered Tyler Jacob's bedroom first. Inside, they found the little boy lying on the bed, clutching his toy lightsaber. His throat had been violently slit open, and Tyler Jacob had bled to death. As the officers called for backup, another terrifying discovery dawned on them. There was absolutely no sign of the 12-year-old Jasmine. The grim realization that Jasmine may have been the target of the killer and that Jasmine may now be in the hands of a maniac pushed the investigation into overdrive. Just like us, the police decided they needed to get to know the Richardson family a bit better.
And to do that, we're going to rewind to before Gareth found Debra. Now, that morning, like almost every morning, Gareth's mum Sarah wasn't at all worried about letting her little boy head over to the neighbour's house. Although they'd only been in the suburb for around a year, the Richardsons had established themselves as a loving, kind, all-Canadian family. Marc and Debra had what the locals might describe as a unique love story. They'd actually met while in rehab, battling addiction in the early 90s.
Unique is such a suburban way of being like, uh-oh. It's like when you meet someone's boyfriend and they suck and you're like, he's interesting.
Yeah.
He's a character.
What a card. So when they had been in rehab, they both had relationships with alcohol and Class A drugs and were trying to shake off the grips of addiction when they fell in love. Now, 9 times out of 10, 2 addicts battling addiction coming together isn't exactly a recipe for success.
It's against the rules.
Yeah, I was going to say, from my understanding, not ever having been to rehab, but watching TV shows about it, it's not encouraged.
Yeah, it's a whole subplot in Hill House.
Yeah, exactly. Don't get into a relationship when you're trying to get clean.
Within the first year of sobriety, I think is the rule, let alone in a rehab centre.
Makes sense. But Marc and Debra weren't the norm. They met in their collectively darkest moment and helped each other through, supporting each other and always helping to resist the urge to relapse. The pair had their first child, Jasmine, in 1994, and their second, Tyler Jacob, 2 years later. The first few years of family life weren't exactly easy. Marc wasn't earning a huge amount of money, and Debra occasionally resorted to food banks to make ends meet. But nonetheless, they had a good time. Nobody went to bed hungry, and everyone felt loved. Through his job working for one of Canada's largest energy companies, Marc slowly but surely began to get a few more qualifications under his belt, and he rose up the ladder, until eventually, just before Jasmine's 10th birthday, Marc was offered a pretty serious promotion and the opportunity to move to the city of Medicine Hat in Alberta.
I want to know the story. Get in touch.
Yeah, why? Where did that name come from, Alberta? I demand to know.
Because it can't have been a game show like Truth or Consequences.
I mean, does Medicine Hat top Truth or Consequences?
No.
Still up there. Truth or Consequences, followed by Medicine Hat. So this move that Marc got, this promotion, not only came with a substantial pay rise, but Marc's employers had even offered to pay for the move to Medicine Hat.
Around a year before the dreadful events in the Medicine Hat house, attention had begun to grow within the Richardson family. Jasmine was 10 when the family moved in. She was academic and quite conventionally girly-girly. She had a good group of friends and kept out of trouble. However, a year later, all of that had changed. No longer was Jasmine interested in kittens and horses. Now she wanted to talk about makeup and heavy metal. She also started acting out at school and getting into trouble with her teachers. And it was at this time that Jasmine developed physically as well. Friends and family have said since that they remember Debra commenting on how it felt like 1 minute her daughter was a little girl, and the next she was a tall young woman with boobs. Her rapid development clearly made Jasmine feel out of place with the other 11 and 12-year-olds in her class. And that's something we can all relate to. I was definitely, as a huge boobed person, definitely one of the first ones to go. 100%. I don't think I was 10, but I was definitely in year 7.
Yeah, that's early. Because I was thinking with Jasmine, like 11 is very early. But I definitely didn't go through that. But I remember the girls that did. And I can only imagine how difficult that must have been to stand out so visually, obviously, at a time in your life where you're desperately trying to do anything but stand out.
Yeah, I don't remember being particularly making me feel a particular kind of way, but I went to an all-girls school. So
yes,
that's different.
Mm-hmm.
but they once did. There was a fire alarm when we were swimming, and they made us get out in our swimming costumes in front of the sixth formers and stand in the field.
In your swimming costume?
In our swimming costumes.
That's horrendous.
In the winter. In front of the sixth formers.
Fuck it out.
That's abuse is what that is.
Ooh.
Jasmine really did stand out. If you look at pictures of her from around the time that she's 11, she looks about 16.
Honestly, I did not look like that even when I was 16. I sure as fuck didn't look like that when I was 11. Like, I know it's so hacky to even say, but all of those Instagram posts of people being like, kids when we were kids, kids these days. Jasmine was a kid back then. Who is a kid these days?
Yeah.
Like, fucking hell. She really, really, really could easily have passed for 16, maybe even 17.
And the standy outness that Jasmine was going through meant that she was on the hunt for a new friendship group. And as many of us have in our time, she fell in with the local goths. Jasmine had been introduced to them by a school friend called Kaylee, another older-looking girl like herself. Kaylee liked to run away a lot. Through Kaylee, Jasmine began hanging out at the mall with a flock or coven of goths.
What is the collective term for a group of goths?
Like a raven, probably.
That's what they want.
Yeah, a dork.
I will lend them my nickname. A smudge of goths is what I think.
And this smudge of goths were a mixture of genders and ages. Jasmine was pretty easily able to slip into this group and become part of the furniture. And it was at this point that Jasmine began to change her vibe on social media as well. Gone were the pictures of a gawky preteen at her friend's sickly pink birthday party. All of those pictures were replaced with heavy makeup, sexual poses, and even a fake gun.
I mean, the picture of her with a fake gun, seriously, she looks 18 in that picture. And I get it, because I think if you took all that makeup away, you took the gun away, you take all of the edgy staring away, and you put her back in like a little girl's, like 11-year-old outfit, she looks wrong. It looks awkward. It looks like a mismatch. But put her in these poses, suddenly now she's getting attention. She's getting like looks. I mean, I feel uncomfortable saying that an 11-year-old is attractive, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
She looks 16 and she looks like an attractive young. I hate myself. I hate what I'm saying, but that's what's happening here. And Jasmine even changed her MySpace bio, listing herself as a 16-year-old single dog owner. She's not 16, she's 12.
Can 16-year-olds have dogs on their own?
But again,
Are there laws against this?
Again, like, would you even classify a 16-year-old as single? It's like it's like completely adult language, isn't it? It's like 16-year-old lie, single, irrelevant when you're a child, dog owner. Again, you cannot be that. It's all very, very adult language. So Jasmine's list of interests went from things like, Hannah said, kittens and ribbons and all the stuff that 11-year-old girls are into.
Raindrops on roses.
Exactly. To hatchets, serial killers, criminal psychology, blood, moonlight, the human anatomy, and, quote, kinky shit. She's 12. But desperately trying to portray herself as, you know, I would say as like a edgy first year, uni first year. Like, I'm just so misunderstood.
This is bringing back so much of my, like, MySpace shame that I can't, like, it's making me feel...
Did you partake?
Bad on the inside. Yes. And I'm hesitant to say that because I don't want anyone to find it.
Oh, please tell us what was on it. So I never had MySpace, full disclosure.
Oh, so you're completely in the clear. Yeah.
I'm clean. I never had. And to this, like, now I think about it, I was talking about it with my parents this weekend when I went home. I'm so glad that this was the case. But I actually didn't have Facebook. I didn't have any social media apart from MSN Messenger, which, like, does that even really count as like texting? I didn't have any form of social media until I got Facebook at uni. And I'm so glad, because now I just don't know what sort of fucking mental shit I would have put on there. But please tell us.
Well, I have a Twitter that's still live that I don't use, that I started at university. And I was a bit worried about that. But I found it, and it's only me bitching about the night bus.
Oh, snap. So that I have a Twitter that I linked to an old email address. It's linked to my university email address. And so now whenever I try get back into it, they're like, we've sent you a verification code to that email. And I'm like, I don't have fucking access to my university email address anymore.
Yeah.
So there is no way for me to get back into it or to shut it down. And it's just there. And the only thing on it is me rage tweeting at National Rail, at Great Northern specifically, and also at my old MP. You fucking prick. The trains never run on time.
Oh, God.
So tragic.
Yeah, my MySpace was much more tragic than that. I can't remember the last time I looked at it, but it's basically, from what I can remember, it's like, I like watching foreign films with subtitles. Music is my boyfriend. And like, I took it so seriously. And you could like order your friends in the like, you had like a top 10 friends.
That is a recipe for disaster.
Yeah, no, I remember that. And that was a hot topic.
Yes.
And
Ouch.
I think just a lot of pictures that I took of myself from the like
Sure.
upward angle with my skin's hair.
Nice.
Aggressive side fringes.
Yep. Tick. Green eyeliner.
Oh, God, yeah. So much green eyeliner.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just it makes me feel sad.
Yeah, I mean, I also am having a flashback to another piece of social media that we definitely did use.
Is it Bebo?
It wasn't Bebo. It was the rife with paedophiles Habbo Hotel.
I never habboed.
It was so filled with pedos. Just wall-to-wall fucking nonsense in that place. Like, literally, how old are you? And then it's just like, what's happening? And it was such an awful, awful place. And I don't know if it still exists, so we look it up. I feel like kids these days don't give a fuck about shit like that. Habbo Hotel, oh, there it is. Oh my God, I'm having flashbacks. Oh, it still exists. No, thank you. Get off my screen. So yeah.
Chat roulette. I did quite a lot of chat roulette.
No, actually, do you know what? I think I played chat roulette once at a friend's house and we were just like, and I think nothing happened, so we were like, whatever. But definitely have a hotel, which is like lucky that nothing happened. And I also, but this is like very much younger, like maybe 8 to 10 Neopets. Loved Neopets. Never
Neopetted.
Loved
I
it.
wasn't allowed games.
Sure.
Which means I'm shocking at Mario Kart and it's very embarrassing when anyone makes me try and do it. No games. Not allowed, apart from Encarta.
I mean, honestly, I'm going to say it again. I'm so glad I wasn't allowed to be publishing things on the internet at such a young age, because I like was listening to this person talk about it and they're like, we should even change the way we phrase things that people put on the internet. Don't say post, because that sounds like you can just take it down later. You should say publish. You are publishing this thing on the internet. Because I was the kind of person that was making little fucking journals filled with all sorts of weird nonsense that would only come back to haunt me now, for sure, and I would get us all cancelled.
Yeah, no, I'm very, very glad that my Facebook is dead and gone.
So anyway, let's carry on with what was going on with Jasmine. Like we said, you know, she's really transcending that kind of 12-year-old preteen, moving very, very rapidly, I would say, to a 17-year-old list of interests, because she also noted on her social media that her heroes were Batman, Jeffrey Dahmer, Chris Angel, Marilyn Manson, and Danny Filth of Cradle of Filth fame. Yeah.
I know Danny Filth.
Yeah, just in case anyone didn't. There you go.
If you don't, you're probably a lot younger than us.
Yep. So, according to the other goths, Jasmine never shared her real age, apart from lying about it in her bio and saying she was 16. And so, of course, the other goths would say she never told us her real age. We didn't know she was 12. Sure. And she was quickly hanging out with people a lot older than herself. Specifically, she developed a relationship with 2 men in their 20s who called themselves, and this is going to make you want to fucking throw that at me. Please don't. I didn't make this up. Trenchcoat and Raven.
Did you watch Raven when you were a kid?
I did watch Raven. I did. I really enjoyed Raven.
Yeah, no, me too. It was like a kids' game show, but in a forest hosted by a large man in a cloak.
Do you know what? I totally confused what you were talking about, but I did also watch that.
Are you talking about That's So Raven?
That's So Raven, which I also enjoyed. So yes, like this is all so like just tiptoeing into like massive, massive, massive issues here, because yes, Jasmine looks older than she is. She looks like a 16-year-old. She's able to some extent, I think, project that persona of seeming like a 16-year-old. But she is a 12-year-old and she's now hanging out with men in their 20s. And it was about this time that 16, quote-unquote, year-old single dog owner Jasmine entered her first relationship. Thankfully, not with Trenchcoat or Raven, but with a 16-year-old goth boy called Devon. Soon, Jasmine's parents got wind of their relationship, and in a well-meaning and I think very, very, like, not open-minded isn't the right word, but in a very, like, they're genuinely trying to be as open about this and as, like, okay about this, considering their 12-year-old is in a relationship with a 16-year-old. Debra decided she wanted to meet 16-year-old Devon. So the three of them went for lunch, and Debra grilled her daughter's new boyfriend with questions about who he was and what his intentions were with Jasmine. All of this very understandable, especially given the 4-year age difference at such a crucial point. 12 to 16 is a big fucking jump.
Yeah, I'm fucking Team Debra, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I wouldn't be having lunch. I'd be locking you in your fucking room. 12 years old, Jesus Christ. However, despite how we might feel about Debra's actions being absolutely fucking fair enough at this point, this lunch firmly set into Jasmine's mind that any future relationships would need to be kept a total secret from her mum and dad, which is like exactly what you don't want to happen.
Yeah, but it's what they do.
Yes. I mean, literally the one thing I can imagine if I ever have a child, I want that child to feel is that whatever you're doing, whatever you're worried about, whatever you're going through, you can come and talk to me. Don't keep secrets from me. But like at the same time, you want to lock them in their room because they're dating 16-year-olds. Yeah. So like most young relationships, Jasmine and Devon's romance didn't last long anyway. A month or so after they got together, Devon got jealous of Jasmine's friendship with Raven, saying that the pair were having too many deep conversations and hugs for his liking, and he dumped her.
And then, on the 28th of December 2005, if she's 12 in 2005, she's younger than we are. Fuck. Right. So, 28th of December 2005, Jasmine signed up for a new social media site called nexopia.com, which was popular, apparently, I've never heard of it, amongst angsty teens in Alberta, Canada, but I'm none of those things. And I was an angsty teen in Amersham, Buckinghamshire, and it doesn't have the same ring.
Should we look it up? So Nexopia is a Canadian social networking website that was created in 2003 by this 18-year-old called Timo Elwood, and it describes itself as a lifestyle and community forum. Why do 14-year-olds need a lifestyle forum? What is your lifestyle? I'm confused. But yeah, apparently there's something here because it's like something called the Dark History of Nexopia, but I don't feel like we have time to get into this. Maybe we'll look at this another time. Let's move on.
This is what Jasmine's bio said on nexopia.com. I am the almighty Jax, spelt Jaxz. Bow down. This next line is straight out of Hannah Maguire's 14-year-old brain.
Playbook.
Yeah. I think very deep thoughts. I'm quite emotional and my mood is ever changing. Although I can be very good at hiding my feelings, and that's never been true of me. I don't trust easily. I either have lots of energy or very little. I like to make attempts at poetry and anime. I make Wookiee noises and often scare small children. I'm afraid of llamas. I'm told that I'm mentally R-worded. Often I'm loud and bounce a lot. When I'm hyper, I like to dress up and want an Edward Scissorhands outfit. Other people live in my head with me. I like random questions. I like to pretend I'm a gangster sometimes. Don't worry, I'm not. Yeah, sometimes I watch Teen Titans because I'm that cool. I play guitar and I suck. I feel so unwell. But it's going to get much worse. The cringiest is yet to come. At around the time she created her Nexopia profile, Jasmine began attending all-ages punk concerts at the local community centre. And it was here that she met a new man. And when we say man, we mean adult man.
23-year-old. Yeah, 23-year-old Jeremy, and I promise you, this is how his surname is pronounced, even though it is not written like this. His name is Jeremy Steinke, and he was one of the oldest guys who hung around with the medicine hat goth scene, because he's 23. Steinke, predictably, was immature and known to have younger girlfriends, including a 17-year-old who he'd allegedly already got pregnant. The 23-year-old had struggled at school and dropped out with no qualifications. He lived in a trailer park with his mum, who was an alcoholic and a drug addict. Steinke had always struggled to maintain friendships with people his own age. His intellect and maturity were both significantly lower than his peers. This had led some people to suggest that Steinke may have been born with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, or FASD. Lower than an average intelligence and maintaining friendships with people significantly younger are both common in FASD. However, his mother has never admitted to drinking during her pregnancy, so a formal diagnosis has never been made. That being said, she has since told reporters that she took large amounts of Demerol and codeine, both of which are opioids, while pregnant with her son. I'm guessing that's not going to help massively with that situation. And she said that she took them because she had been prescribed them for an ovarian tumour. Steinke's father had left when he was young, and he'd been raised by a series of his mother's abusive boyfriends. So yes, a recipe very much not for a happy family or success here for Jeremy Steinke. Years later, his mother May would admit that her third husband pushed a young Jeremy Steinke into a chest freezer so hard that he had cracked his head. Again, just piling on top, just more and more bad news for this kid, who by the time we meet him is not a kid, but he had very, very obviously a very troubled childhood. And another one of these stepfathers brutally beat Steinke when he tried to defend his mother during a domestic fight. As a young teen, Steinke had started drinking large amounts of alcohol, smoking weed and taking hard drugs. Age 15, he drank so much he passed out outside in the freezing cold Canadian winter and nearly died of hypothermia.
I watched a YouTube video years ago about this woman who moved to Canada. I think she was Australian. And same thing, got hammered, fell asleep in the snow, and she had to have her hands cut off.
I mean, I'm surprised you survived.
Yeah.
But survive he did, and aged about 20 is when Steinke began taking large amounts of cocaine on a regular basis.
By the time Jeremy Steinke and Jasmine Richardson had crossed paths at a punk rock concert, Steinke was known as Hyper, probably all that cocaine. But he had a reputation for being a good-natured older goth who spent what little money he had on making sure everyone had a good time, which sounds to me like giving underage children cocaine.
Yes, it sounds very much like grooming / desperate attempts to have a connection and friends with kids who, if he didn't spend money on them, would probably also realise that they didn't want to be friends with you. And you certainly can't have relationships with people your own age at the age of 23.
Steinke drove an uninsured Pontiac Firebird, shoot me in the head, and liked to brag about his collection of ninja swords. And he also told people he was a 300-year-old werewolf. He makes me think of the Crossbow Man, Stephen Griffiths.
I can't remember that guy.
Exactly the same.
Okay, got it.
Had like a pet lizard on a leash.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and this is the thing. It's just like, it's those people who, can't fit in with their own older subset of peers. So therefore they have to drop it down to people who are just young enough and impressionable enough to think that you are cool when you say things like you're a 300-year-old werewolf.
God.
Yeah, truly, just
horrific. One of the first times that Steinke met Jasmine, he took her and a few other younger girls out in his Firebird to do donuts in an abandoned car park.
Again, look, the 12-year-olds / 16-year-olds that you're hanging out with don't have a car. I've got a car. I can take you to go do this thing that you would do if you were 16 and had a car. Not if you were 23 and had a car.
And then a few weeks later, Jasmine was out at the mall with Kaylee, who'd introduced her to the goth scene in the first place, and they bumped into Steinke. Steinke and Kaylee were quite close, and the three of them spent the day hanging out at the mall. Then, at the next concert, they hung out again, and soon the 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson and the 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke began to develop what their peers saw as a quote-unquote friendship. The pair got closer, and Steinke began to tell Jasmine all about his life. He told her that he was engaged to a girl called Danielle, but their relationship was in a bad place. He told her all about his troubled childhood, his difficulties at school, and his abusive parents. Jasmine, who also thought she had a troubled childhood, difficulties at school, and abusive parents, began to feel that her and Jeremy Steinke really understood each other.
And just to be clear, there is absolutely no evidence whatsoever that the Richardsons were abusive to Jasmine in any way, shape or form. It's exactly as Hannah said. She thought, just like a lot of people seem to think
most of us
age.
do,
Yeah.
In early February 2006, Steinke sent Jasmine a message letting her know that he and this Mystery Danielle character, who probably never existed in the first place, were over.
Again, though, sounding like, oh, I was engaged. I have a fiance, but it's just not working out. Again, it's just like, it's so deep. You're so like brooding. Yeah. You're so adult. You had a fiance. It's like, ugh, he's such a twat.
Mm-hmm. And 2 weeks later, on Valentine's Day, no less, Steinke sent Jasmine another message asking her to be his girlfriend. And just like that, the two of them were quote-unquote dating. I don't know if you can call it that.
Ugh. So because of Marc and Debra's dislike of 16-year-old Devon, Jasmine and Steinke's communication was kept strictly online and in secret. Jasmine was not about to spill the beans to her mum and dad. Jeremy, being an angsty goth who liked to hang out with teenagers, was also on Nexopia, the lifestyle blog. He called himself a soul eater, and his only one like listed on the site was, quote, fellow lichen brethren.
It's like Of the Wolf.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah.
Fuck's sake.
Yeah, it's bad. Really, really bad stuff.
Yeah. Go, because he's a 300-year-old werewolf.
Yes, of course. How could we forget?
Yes. Now, in classic style of exactly this kind of guy, he only has one like listed, but he has a very long list of dislikes. These consisted of my heart being broken again, home wreckers, hypocrites, lies, the sun, I agree with you there, untrustworthy people.
The newspaper or the celestial object?
The celestial object and its rays of aging. Unreliable people, backstabbers, cheaters, spiderwebs, not spiders, they're cool, but spelled Kewl.
It's so 2000s, I want to die.
Planes, posers, prostitutes, the N-word, which he actually wrote out, pigs, cops, and the godforsaken accordion.
Out of all of the musical instruments for you to take issue with, the accordion is quite an odd one.
Well, he's an edgelord, Hannah. So a few weeks after Jasmine and Jeremy began their mostly online romance, things started to go wrong for Jasmine at home. Jasmine had begun sneaking out at night to spend time with her friends until the early hours of the morning, and of course to see Jeremy, which is like absolutely terrifying. Like if I had a 12-year-old, the thing I would be scared of the most is that they're not in their room asleep and they're on their phone. Jasmine is fully sneaking out of the house like an actual 16-year-old to go hang out with people until the next day. Now, Jasmine had been caught and scolded by her parents a few times, but things were about to get a whole lot worse. One Friday night, Marc and Debra left for a night at a hotel together. Eyebrow wiggle. They are parents with 2 kids and probably don't get very much alone time. And they left 12-year-old Jasmine to look after her younger brother, Tyler Jacob. However, shortly after her parents had left, Jasmine put her little brother to bed and then she snuck out to hang out at a nearby 7-Eleven. Now, Tyler Jacob then woke up to find that he was very much alone in the house. He completely freaked out. He's only 8 years old, and he called his mum, and his parents rushed home. This was a massive turning point for Jasmine's relationship with her mum and dad. Things had gone from, this is just a phase she'll probably grow out of, to we need to pull our daughter back into shape. Understandably, Jasmine was grounded, indefinitely, and her parents began monitoring her time online.
Give me a shitty nappy any day of the week. This is the stuff that fucking terrifies me.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, the Richardsons, having read through Jasmine's online profiles about serial killers and kinky shit, Jasmine's parents decided that the best thing to do was box up the family computer so that Jasmine could no longer spend any time online talking to the likes of Trenchcoat and Raven. On top of that, they asked Jasmine to attend some counselling sessions with them to try and get to the bottom of her feelings.
I honestly think the Richardsons are doing everything they possibly can.
Oh, they're doing the most, yeah.
Like, literally short of my advice of just locking her in her room, they're doing everything that any responsible person would advise you to do. Take away the computer, ground her, love her, and take her to a counsellor.
Jasmine agreed straight away. And quite quickly, things after counselling became a little bit easier. Jasmine started being less provocative at home and getting into less trouble at school. And as a result of that, the grounding softened. Although Jasmine was still banned from the family computer, she was allowed to hang out with friends after school. In reality, Jasmine thinks she's about 5 steps ahead of the game. She was just pacifying her parents. Nothing had actually changed.
It's so hard because, I feel like that is the obvious thing that she's doing. But then if your child shows progress, you can't just be like, well, you get no reward for that.
Because I don't believe
because
you.
I don't believe you. It's like, what do? You have to positively reinforce.
Yeah.
Welcome to Hannah and Suruti's childless parenting podcast. Just don't do it. But yeah, you just feel like they're doing the right thing again. And she's just lying to them. Because she's fucking sneaky. Because kids are sneaky.
Yeah, I've only had Mabel a fucking 3 weeks. She's already pretending she can't go downstairs, so I'll feed her. I'm wise to you. Every evening, before she came home, Jasmine would head off to the mall to hang out with her goth mates or head over to the local library to chat to Jeremy Steinke online. Unfortunately for the Richardsons, they fell hook, line and sinker for this change of attitude. And in fact, after a relentless barrage of pleading, the Richardsons even conceded that Jasmine could go to a punk rock show at the community centre. The only condition was that they had to go with her. I would rather not go ever again.
I know. I'd be like, you know what? Don't worry about it. What's for dinner?
I don't even like punk music anymore. What are you talking about?
You've ruined everything.
But that's not the attitude that Jasmine took. Desperate to see her friends and, naturally, Jeremy Steinke, Jasmine agreed to going to this gig with her mum and dad. On the night of March the 16th, 2006, they all headed off to watch a band called One Shot Left, all together as a family.
God, honestly, the Richardsons, you are doing literally everything. The fact that they're even willing to go to this probably terrible concert with their child just so they don't have to say, you can't go and deprive her of that experience.
I wouldn't even let my mum come swimming with me. No, Karen, stay in the car. So embarrassing. She was like, I won't talk to you. And I was like, Mum, we have the same face.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna
know. Yeah, I remember my parents taking me to, drop me off at uni and setting up your dorm. And my dad was just fussing about stuff. And I was like, just leave. Just go. There's other people. There's other people in the common room. I just want to go talk to them. Just leave. And they were so well, I never. And they told me since they were we thought when we drove away that day, we would literally never see you again. And I was like, you're so dramatic.
Do you remember? I can't remember one of the first, I can't remember which show it was, but one of our first big live shows. There were listeners who were sat in front of your parents.
Oh, yeah.
Just the only,
yeah.
The brown only, people in the room.
In their 50s, brown people in the room. And they were like, are you Suruti's parents? And they love taking selfies with listeners. So if you ever see my parents at shows and you want to take a selfie with them, they will love to do it. So anyway, they go to this probably fucking god-awful, godforsaken punk rock concert
featuring
whatever the fuck it is.
25-minute accordion solo.
Absolutely. Much to Jeremy Steinke's horror. And at this event, Jasmine's parents kept a watchful eye on her from a distance. Again, see, they're being cool. They're not standing right next to her. They're just we're going to go. You can hang out with your friends, but we're going to fucking watch you all night. And they seemed content that their daughter really was just hanging out with a bunch of edgy teenagers. She seemed happy messing about with a bunch of goth kids her own age. However, in a break in the set, Jasmine snuck out of a side door and found 23-year-old man Jeremy Steinke. And again, I have to say to the Richardsons, they're obviously going along with this because they knew that Jasmine had been through troubles fitting in and stuff. So for them to just see that their daughter has friends and a group of people that she's socializing with must have made them feel so happy. And that's obviously why they're trying not to completely lock her in her room. Like we said, she runs off to go find Jeremy. And according to witnesses, Steinke picked Jasmine up and spun her around in his arms before the pair slipped off into an alleyway. Jasmine was only out of her parents' sight for a few minutes before her dad, Mark, came marching round the corner. when he saw 23-year-old Jeremy Steinke locked in a passionate kiss with his 12-year-old daughter. Marc shouted and Jeremy bolted. The younger man easily sprinted off into the night, leaving Jasmine alone with her stunned parents. Jasmine was marched to the car and driven straight home. Now her MP3 player was taken away. So was her makeup and her straighteners. Good modern parenting there. They're like, no more of this. And there was no more public library either. It was straight home from school for Jasmine. Now she really was grounded. Or at least, so they thought. For some reason, which we're sure Marc and Debra deeply regretted in their dying moments, after a lot of pleading, they allowed Jasmine access to the family computer once again, provided she delete all of her older friends on Nexopia and vampirefreak.com, which she did, all except one.
And just like that, in less than 24 hours after the pair of them had been caught in that alleyway, Jasmine and Steinke were talking again. And the messages got progressively more worrying. On the 18th of March 2006, Jasmine, who is 12, messaged Jeremy, who is 23. Sex, 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 oh, and love. Jeremy replied, sex, 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 oh, and love. What's that supposed to mean? Sad face, but with a bracket because it's the 2000s. Jasmine replied that I miss you an overwhelmingly large amount and love you, and that also I want to bang in capital letters you, love.
Oh, no, she's 12 years old. I hate this.
This was the first time in their quote-unquote relationship that sex had ever been mentioned. And from the messages I just begrudgingly read out to you, it appeared that Jeremy wasn't particularly enthused by the sex chat from his 12-year-old girlfriend. However, as we will go on to see, this sexless Jeremy Steinke didn't last for long. It just gets a lot worse, actually.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, some people might be wondering, like, why the fuck did Debra and Marc give Jasmine the computer back? But like, the thing is, she's still at school. And there is only so much you can do in controlling and restricting your children from having internet access before they fall behind everybody else in their class.
Yeah.
Like, if you are like, here is a tool that gives your child access to literally everything they need to do to smash it at school, but also they can talk to fucking 23-year-old, 300-year-old werewolves on there and talk about banging them. How do you police that? It's so difficult. So yeah, like Hannah said, the messaging gets worse. And 2 days later, Jasmine messaged Jeremy again, saying the following. Rawr, I hate them. I know, I had to say it.
I'd forgotten about that being a thing.
Yeah. Rawr, I hate them. So I have this plan. It begins with me killing them and ends with me living with you. So we're set. I'm going to try and call you, but I really don't know if I'll be able to. They're treating me like shit. No, they're not. I hate them so much, but I hope this won't bring us far apart. I hope to talk to you soon and love you with all my heart. To this very fucking irritating message, Jeremy replied, well, I love your plan, but we need to get a little more creative with like details and stuff. I wish they wouldn't treat you the way they do. Grr. It angers me to hear that. I dislike them very much. Don't worry, I love you too, my sexy beast. I hope to hear from you soon. Take care, my love. You have the key to my heart, and soon enough you shall have my heart. If I die anyway, 'cause I'll give it to you now. I'll die, then you won't be able to hear me say how much I love you. Love, XOXOXO. I didn't even understand that last bit. It was so confusing and badly written. But then Steinke posted this next bit I'm going to read to you that is apparently a poem on his Nexopia page.
I don't think I can take it.
You have to. Take it. My girlfriend's family are totally unfair. They say that they really care. They don't know what is going on. They just assume, as their greed continues to consume. She continues to thank that I came into her life to help her out and to stop what they keep trying to shout. It's all total bullshit. Their throats I want to slit. They will regret the shit they have done, especially when I see to it that they are gone. They shall pay for their injustice. Finally, there shall be silence. Their blood shall be payment.
Obviously, iambic pentameter is not something that was covered at the school he went to.
He did barely went to school. Oh my God.
I think they do iambic pentameter in like year 4. Anyway. Oh, I'm actually like almost crying. That was so horrible.
It was horrendous. Truly horrendous. But there you go. We all listened to it. There we go.
I mean, now we don't have to do it again.
No, we don't.
This wasn't the first time that the pair had spoken about murder. Killing, cutting and blood were pretty normal conversations on the goth scene. But the idea that it might be aimed at someone in particular was a little bit more unusual. The pair carried on chatting for the next few weeks, out of sight of Jasmine's parents. Then, in early April, Jasmine hatched a plan to see Jeremy Steinke in the flesh again. She'd been caught a few times trying to sneak out, but this time was different. She crept down in the early hours of the morning and crawled out of the basement window. As she left, Jasmine hid a pair of pyjamas outside her house and snuck away to the nearest bus stop. Waiting at that bus stop was Jeremy Steinke. And we don't really know much about the rest of that night, but we do know 2 things. Firstly, Jasmine's escape proved that somebody could get in and out of the basement window of the Richardson home undetected. Secondly, Jeremy Steinke took the 12-year-old Jasmine back to his mother's trailer park home, and they had what Jasmine felt at the time was consensual sex, but obviously she is 12, she cannot consent, that is not sex, that is rape. When Jasmine arrived back at her house, she put her pyjamas on over the clothes that she'd worn out and snuck back in through the window. Her mum heard her come in and came down to catch her in the act, but because she was wearing her pyjamas, Jasmine was able to convince her mum that she'd only just woken up and was coming down to the basement to get some air.
Sure, Jasmine.
Honestly. Over the next few weeks, the fantasies of killing Jasmine's family continued. And at some stage, the line between fantasy and reality started to blur. At first, Jeremy was messaging his friends with emoji-filled scrawls of text bragging about he and Jasmine and how they'd made a plan to kill Jasmine's family. And the best bit was that it was all her idea. But then, the mood shifted somewhat. In mid-July, Steinke got stoned with a friend and told him that Jasmine would probably break up with him if he didn't go through with the plan. He even asked his mate if he'd help him do the deed because he was too scared to do it on his own, to which, quite rightly, he was told promptly to go and fuck himself. We don't know whether or not Jeremy's friends thought that he was being serious. They seem to be the type of people that talk about slitting throats and being 300-year-old werewolves, etc. I imagine it is quite difficult to pick out what's true and what's not.
Mm-hmm. But I do appreciate that when he actually put a plan together and started to point fingers at a particular person, his friend was like, fuck off.
Yeah. So yeah, we're not sure what the friends thought, and we're really even less sure about whether Jeremy himself believed that he would really go through with it. But the concept of multiple murders was very much on the agenda.
On Friday, the 21st of April 2006, just a month after he had caught Jeremy Steinke kissing his 12-year-old daughter in an alleyway, Marc and his wife Debra decided to take their 2 kids out for a spin on their motorbikes. They had a big trip to Ontario planned. Ontario planned for the summer. And they wanted to get Jasmine and Tyler Jacob used to being on the back of the bikes. The ride was nice, and it was the first time in a long time that they'd hung out together as a family. The next day, Marc got up early to see the arrival of his new pickup truck, straight from the dealership, much to the interest of the neighbours. Jasmine was in the house, still very much grounded, but seeming happier by the day. A few miles away, in his mum's trailer, Jeremy was also waking up. He had had a big night out and woken up feeling groggy with his mate Mick. They messed about together with Jeremy's guitar for a few hours before Mick headed off and Jeremy went into town in his mum's pickup. He dropped off Kaylee, Jasmine's school friend, at Raven's place before picking up a 12-pack of beers and some weed. Steinke smoked 2 full bowls with his dealer before heading home to the trailer again. Mick was back there with his girlfriend Hayley, and the trio drank the beers that Steinke had picked up before raiding the fridge for more booze. So it's safe to say by this point Jeremy Steinke is very much on one.
Mm-hmm.
He smoked a hell of a lot of weed and already is getting quite inebriated. Jeremy then drove away again, this time apparently to visit his mate Jordan. He told Jordan while he was there about his plan to kill Jasmine's parents. Now, Again, Jordan wasn't sure if Stank was serious, but he was a little freaked out all the same. Jeremy hung out there for a while, drinking some vampire-themed wine.
Just red wine.
Yeah. Before heading back to his trailer once more.
Back at Jasmine's house, she was chatting with a friend online. This friend asked Jasmine if she wanted to go swimming the next day, to which Jasmine replied, "I can't." This friend pushed for more information, but Jasmine never replied. By this point, Jeremy was now back at his trailer with Mick, Hayley, and a few others who turned up while he was gone. Jeremy put on the film Natural Born Killers, which, if you haven't seen it, is about two lovers with troubled childhoods who go on a massive killing spree. Stank watched the Tarantino-written classic for the umpteenth time, soaking in his favourite film. And as it reached its climax, as the young boy and product of violence Mickey was released by the killers, Jeremy blurted out that when they did it, it would be different. Jasmine was going to kill her little brother.
When the film finished, Jeremy headed out again, this time to a different drug dealer called Cam. Cam was watching a movie with his girlfriend Jenny, and the three of them took a line of cocaine each in the kitchen. Jenny then offered Jeremy some ecstasy, which he took, before buying 2 grams of cocaine and heading off yet again. He's really mixing it all up in there, in a terrifying soup of doom.
Yeah, his jaw is having a bad time.
So it was now the early hours of the morning, on the 23rd of April 2006. And Jeremy Stank, who had spent the entire day drinking, smoking weed and doing hard drugs, drove to the local gas station. He went in to buy a pack of gum to take the smell of smoke off his breath. Yeah, I'm sure that'll do it. Before getting back in the car, snorting the 2 grams of cocaine and setting off to Jasmine's house. When Jeremy arrived, he parked up and crept across the lawn with a knife in his pocket. He found his way to Jasmine's window and threw a pine cone to get her attention. 12-year-old Jasmine looked out and silently motioned towards the basement window, which she'd already left open for his arrival.
Jeremy then crept over to the window, put on a black ski mask, tried his best to quietly enter the Richardson house. But unfortunately for Jeremy Stank, the litres of alcohol, along with the weed, cocaine and the ecstasy, all caught up with him, and his quiet entrance didn't quite go as planned. The 23-year-old fully adult man stumbled through the window, making an incredible racket that immediately woke up Jasmine's mum, Debra. Debra, who assumed that this noise was her daughter, yet again trying to sneak out through the basement window, got out of bed in her nightie and rushed downstairs. She stormed into the basement, expecting to see her 12-year-old daughter climbing out of the window. But what she found was the 23-year-old Jeremy Stank climbing in, wearing a black ski mask and holding a knife.
It's literally the worst nightmare.
Yep.
It's like when you're scared, slightly feeling a little bit freaked out in the house. And like sometimes I stay at ACT Face's flat by myself if he's gone out, and it'll just be me and Baby Blue. And Baby Blue doesn't bark, which is what makes me feel a little bit more on edge, because I'm used to Big Blue, who barks at fucking everything. So when I'm in the house with Big Blue, I know there's nobody in the house because Blue would be going fucking mental. And what will happen sometimes is I'll go have a shower and I'll be like, what if somebody came in while I was in the shower? And because sometimes ACT will be like, I haven't got my keys, don't lock the door. And I'll be like, but I have to have a shower. But I don't want you to be knocking on the door while I'm in the shower. And I'll come out and Blue won't, he'll have moved, but he won't have barked. Like, and he'll do this thing where he'll sit in the spare room and stare at the door of the ensuite that's in there that we never use. And I'll be like, stop it, Blue. And I'm like, what if somebody came in and is hiding in that ensuite and you're just not barking, but you're staring at it because you're telling me in your own silent Bob way that he's fucking in there? And I was like, right, I'm just going to go look. And I opened it and I was like, okay, there's no one here for you. But in one moment, there'll be a towel hanging up in a weird way and you'll be like, oh my God, there's somebody in here with a black ski mask on and a knife that's going to stab me to death.
I'm in the Invisible Man.
Exactly. And this is what you do not expect. Debra goes down there expecting to see her daughter, and then she sees everybody's fucking worst nightmare. I hate this bit so much.
Of course, Debra screamed. And without hesitation, Jeremy lunged at her and stabbed her 12 times. Debra stumbled back into the kitchen before collapsing on the floor. Moments later, Marc, who'd obviously heard the commotion all the way upstairs, threw himself at Jeremy with a screwdriver. The pair had an explosive fight in the basement. Marc stabbed Jeremy repeatedly with his screwdriver, even gouging the younger man's eyes with his thumbs. Jeremy was so off his tits he didn't really notice.
Ugh.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug. Stank relentlessly stabbed Marc Richardson back over 20 times. Some of those blows went so deep that the knife struck bone and bent.
Marc, despite putting up a valiant fight, couldn't hold out any longer, and like his wife, he collapsed on the floor. Marc Richardson's final words were simply, "Why?" To which Stank replied, "Because you kept us apart and your daughter wants you dead," before flinging his own bloodied knife on the floor. Jeremy then headed upstairs to find Jasmine, who had already made her way into her little brother's room. Jeremy then watched on as his 12-year-old girlfriend attempted to smother her 8-year-old brother with a pillow. The young boy was laying on his back and trying to defend himself with his toy lightsaber.
No.
Jasmine eventually gave up with the smothering and reached for a knife. And without hesitation, she slit the 8-year-old boy's throat. Jasmine then watched as her little brother made gurgling noises and pleaded for his life before walking out of the door, heading downstairs and walking out into the night. What the actual fuck? I know nothing should shock us after having done this show for 6 years.
I was just thinking that.
But
I was like, do I need to retire? Because
well,
this is
It's honestly, it's just the most because I think with Jasmine, you see a child, because she is a child, she's 12 years old when she does this. Debra and Marc do everything right, I think, insofar as parenting her. And you never see outward signs of really, really troubling behavior from Jasmine. You see her being ostracized, her feeling like an outcast. That's all fucking part and parcel. But to suddenly escalate to the point that she is willing to kill her parents or have them killed and then kill her own brother, it's like it very much does come out of nowhere, and I think that's what's so shocking.
After they got out of the house, Stank freaked out and ran away. He said he was going home to pack and that he would come back for Jasmine later. So he left Jasmine alone outside. She got in a taxi to the nearby 7-Eleven and then took a long walk to Jeremy's trailer park home. When she arrived, Jeremy had indeed packed, and they decided to go out for some food before heading to a party. At that party, Jeremy told everyone about what had happened at the Richardson house. But naturally, nobody believed him.
There's something really wrong with him.
Yeah. Then he phoned a 19-year-old friend called Cassie Lancaster, who fancied him, and asked her over to come and clean his truck. And then the next day after the party, Jeremy asked Cassie to drive him and Jasmine around in that truck all day. So it didn't really seem like either of them had too much of a plan.
Why are they getting Cassie involved? It's just so confusing. And it's why are you going to a party and telling everybody what just happened? Nothing about this second half makes any sense. Post-murder, their behaviour. Do we just put it down to them being in complete shock, or at least Stank being in complete shock?
I have no words. After this completely aimless driving, the trio pulled into a gas station, and that's when Cassie saw the newspaper reports of a murder in Medicine Hat. And then she started to put two and two together and asked the question why there was blood in the truck.
No shade on Cassie, she's not got anything to do with anything, but that'd probably be my first question. So with the enormous online paper trail, by the time reports of the murders were hitting the press, the police already knew all about Jeremy Stank and his relationship with 12-year-old Jasmine. And remember, the police, they find Debra and Marc and Tyler Jacob all murdered in the house. They think Jasmine is just missing, but then they find out everything about her relationship with Jeremy, and they read all of Jasmine and Jeremy's online messages. So they knew now that he was the man they needed to find. And because Jeremy and Jasmine had both been communicating with friends via call and text all day after the murders, they hadn't exactly been hard to track down. And so, in the afternoon of the 21st of April 2006, Jeremy, Jasmine, and Cassie were pulled over in Jeremy's mum's truck and arrested. Now, unfortunately, for our understanding of the case, but in a gold star moment for the Canadian justice system, what happened from here is basically somewhat still a mystery all these years later. And this is because of the Canadian Youth Criminal Justice Act, which meant that from the moment 12-year-old Jasmine Richardson was arrested, her name could no longer be used in the Canadian press, and information about the case became very limited.
Here's some stuff we do know. Cassie took a plea bargain, and her original charge of accessory to murder was dropped and replaced with obstruction of justice.
Poor Cassie.
I know, man. She's literally just... I know we're never supposed to say this phrase. Wrong place, wrong time.
I mean, yeah. What else can you say? Context is important. And that phrase, there is no better time to use that phrase than here.
So for her obstruction of justice charge, Cassie served 1 year house arrest and she did regular drug and alcohol tests. We also know that when Jasmine's school locker was searched, investigators found a hand-drawn comic that she had made depicting the murder of her whole family. And then Jasmine and Jeremy running off into the sunset to live happily ever after. Jasmine was charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder. She is almost certainly the youngest Canadian in history to be charged with multiple murders. Steinke was also charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder and sent Jasmine a letter asking for her hand in marriage while they both awaited their trials.
Fuck off.
Jasmine replied to this letter saying yes, she would marry him. However, by the time she was found guilty on all charges a year later, all contact between her and Steinke had ended completely. A year later, in November 2008, 18 months after they'd killed Jasmine's whole family, Jeremy Steinke was sentenced to 3 life sentences to serve concurrently. He'll be up for parole in 10 years' time, 2033. Because Jasmine was under 14, the maximum sentence she could receive was 10 years, which she was given. She was given the full 10-year sentence, minus the 18 months that she'd already been in custody for.
Jasmine served the first 4 years of her sentence in full-time custody at a psychiatric hospital, before moving on to supervised community release, where she stayed at the hospital but was slowly reintroduced back into society. Her extended family maintained contact with Jasmine for the entirety of her time inside. Which, what? Look, I'm not saying... I think that's a great thing that they did. But, could I do that? Fuck no.
Obviously there's something very wrong with Jeremy Steinke. There's something very wrong with Jasmine Richardson
Very
too.
wrong. Very, very wrong. But it's scary wrong in that, look, I'm all for rehabilitation, but I believe everyone could be rehabilitated? Fuck no. Do I believe that everyone should have the opportunity for rehabilitation? Yes. Can it be done? No. And I would be fucking scared of her.
I suppose the extended family are making the argument that she's not very well.
Yeah. Good for them. Good on them. Good on them for doing that. And also we know that if somebody is in prison, that having connections to the outside world absolutely categorically makes a huge, huge difference in reoffending. If they have something to hold on to, they have a reason to stay connected to the outside world, they're much less likely to do that, especially a family. But see what she did to her family? Fuck. So yeah, they stayed in touch with her for the entirety of that time that she was in prison. And in 2012, it was reported that she was doing well and was showing genuine remorse for her actions. Because of this, she was allowed to attend Mount Royal University in Calgary under a new identity. And again, look, I'm not saying don't give her those opportunities. But she also lied a hell of a lot and managed to convince her own mum of things that weren't true. I'm scared of her. By 2016, Jasmine had completed her sentence and her university degree with no signs of reoffending. So, good. During her final sentence review, Justice Scott Brooker said to Jasmine, "You have a desire to atone for what you did. What you can do is honour their memory. You have been doing exactly that, and I think your parents and brother would be proud of you," which, is that for you to say? That makes me feel really... Look, again, yes, let's help her. There's no point wasting another life than just throwing her in prison for the rest of it and not rehabilitating her. I believe that's what prisons are there for. But she killed her 8-year-old brother and robbed him of having any opportunity of having any sort of life. I don't know. That makes me uncomfortable that the judge, I don't think you should bring them into this, but that's just how I feel. Anyway, Jasmine now lives as a free woman in Canada under a new identity. And I'm glad to say, with no visible criminal record. Because yes, rehabilitation, try it. If it works, awesome. But prisons are also there for justice and retribution, I do believe. And I'm is 10 years enough? I don't know. If she doesn't do anything ever again, fine. But I don't know.
Yeah. It's the fact that she was 12, I think.
Yeah, it's tricky. And it's such an anomalous case. I think it probably was handled in the best way possible.
Yeah.
And you don't typically see cases like this where children that young are committing crimes.
Yeah, and I also don't think I have enough of a handle on who was really instigating everything, because like, sure, she's saying all of those things, but she's fucking 12. Like, you're 23.
And if she hadn't killed her brother, I would agree with you.
Yeah.
It's that I'm like, and I think she did it because she's like, I can't overpower my dad and my mum. I might be tall for a 12-year-old, but I'm still a 12-year-old girl. And that's why she needed Stank, a 23-year-old man, to take down her father, most importantly. And she was like, but I can kill my 8-year-old brother. And so I don't give her a pass on that. I think she is, in my mind, I think she probably was the instigator because she was the one that felt trapped.
Yeah.
But there you go. That's it. It's fucking miserable
Hideous.
case. Absolutely hideous case.
God.
So yeah, that is the story of the Richardson family murders. Ugh. Bummer. All round. And yeah.
I'm very bummed.
Yes. Bummed all round. But yeah, if you are feeling bummed and you want to feel less bummed, or maybe bummed in a different way, go listen to our shorthand on the Spanish Paralympic team, which was out this Tuesday. And you can listen to that and all other shorthands we have done over on Amazon Music. And we'll see you next time for some other things.
Unless I have retired, because that might have done me in.
Well, quite. Goodbye.
Bye.